when you're working, is that considered, or would that be considered work? So the issue about getting sent to a place or having to be at a place for, let's say, continuing education, um, or for, let's say, marketing purposes, or a conference or something like that, those kinds of things, if you were injured, are actually going to fall under the umbrella of a workers' compensation case. So it doesn't matter, let's say, that you are at an offsite facility, because you're still going to be in a position where that would get covered, right? So the idea, okay, would be that your employer sends you, right? So if that happens, then you are under the control of the employer. If you said to the employer, hey, I think I really want to go to this conference, I think it's going to help, then the employer says, okay, well, we'll reimburse you, or we'll pay for whatever. Then again, you're under the control of the employer. So, and all the rules would apply. So let's say you're, at a conference hall and you slip and fall on the floor or whatever. Um, then again, you have your workers' compensation case where you would get your medical benefits, temporary disability if you were out of work, and an award. But the question then would be, okay, like normal, why did you fall? And if you're at an offsite facility, was that facility's negligence the cause of your fall? So potentially what would also be a third party case. So um, it's always good to just be aware of that. So then the question came up with, okay, so if I go for purposes of work, that is like a conference or an education seminar or whatnot, what about if my job requires me to go to the company picnic and I get injured at the company picnic? Is that covered? The answer is yes. The reason that that would also be covered is because um, you would, you're in essence told that you have to go. But let's say you weren't told that you have to go, but everybody else is going. So if you don't go, then you're going to feel like, you got left out or whatever. So there's sort of the feeling that you would have to go. And so the reality is that if it's a sort of a firm or employer sponsored function in some way, and as a result you get injured, then you would be covered by workers' compensation. Now, that case, that the employer at the picnic was actually a tried case, and eventually the petitioner won. And the arguments were basically that instills some method of control by the employer. Therefore, that would remain covered. Okay, so that was one of the things that had come up, and then the other thing that was important is to understand again, why does the person, or how does the person get injured, right? So again, if it's a company picnic and they're playing volleyball and they do whatever, okay, well, it's not going to be anybody else's fault, right? But if you're in a convention hall and somebody drops water and somebody doesn't see it because the floor is shiny anyways, and you go flying, okay, well, then there may also be that third party or that personal injury lawsuit in addition to the workers' compensation benefits. Okay. So that was something that we wanted to bring up. Now, the other part of, let's say, traveling goes into, okay, well, let's say the conference is over, or let's say the education part of things is over and you go to dinner, and then you are at the restaurant after the function, right? So then the question would be, are you working? So here's where it gets very fact sensitive, right? So if you're, let's say, at a dinner and you're marketing or whatever, then yes, that still, I would argue, very much be under the control of the employer still. And so it would be covered. There's a case where an individual was injured in their room while away on a business conference, and as a result, sustained injury. And what happened was they sort of put that under the umbrella of what's called a special mission. So the whole trip was sort of, didn't matter where you were, but the whole trip was covered. So just some interesting facts about, like if your job is just, go to an office and sit there, right? Just once you are under the control of the employer. So that means that if you have or are told to park in a particular area, and you get out of the car and you're walking into work, then you are covered by workers' compensation because you were told where to park, again, under the control of the employer. If you work for, let's say you work in a big mall and you just park anywhere, and you get out of the car and you're walking in and you get hurt, that actually would not be covered by workers' compensation. Now, you may potentially have a lawsuit against, or for, having why you fell, but it would not be covered by workers' comp if you weren't in the position of, it would, if you're not specifically told, or if you're not under the control of the employer, then you would not be covered under New Jersey workers' compensation.